And hi, everyone. My name is Brigita Seguis, and joining me today for this session is my colleague Graeme Harrison.
Hi, everybody.
So in the next 45 minutes or so, we will be talking about impact. So we'll be telling you everything that you need to know about measuring impact. That's the name of our session. And just to give you an idea of how we're going to structure our session, here's a brief agenda. So we will start with defining impact and giving you some reasons as to why we think we should measure it in the learning and assessment context. Then we will tell you specifically about what we do at Cambridge University Press and Assessment in that respect, so with regard to impact evaluation. And then Graeme will talk you through some of the real life examples of our impact work. So without further ado, let's begin. So I think some of you will probably be familiar with these terms, so washback and impact. A lot of the times these terms are used interchangeably, but actually there are some slight differences between them, and this is something that we would like to clarify in the very beginning. So washback, which is also referred to as backwash, has been broadly defined mainly in the assessment literature as the effect of testing on teaching and learning. So it's very much the consequences that a test has on what learners do in the classroom and what teachers do in the classroom. And that's why when we think about washback specifically, we often think about what we call micro context. So we're looking at a smaller level. So we're looking at slightly smaller units, which in our case would be the classroom and perhaps the school environment. But when we think about impact, we think a lot more broadly. So we think in much broader terms. Impact concerns the effects and consequences that a test, a learning resource, or an educational intervention can have beyond the classroom. So as you can see, we're expanding here. And we are looking at what we call macro context. So we're focusing on things like the whole society, community, sometimes it's country level. So as such, washback is sort of a subcategory of impact because impact still encapsulates the micro context, but it also expands into the macro context of society, community, or even country level. So there are many different ways of classifying impact and thinking about impact. So I will introduce some of these dimensions now. So we can talk about positive impact, which is hopefully what we see in all contexts, that's what we are all aiming for. But we can also have negative impact, and we can also have neutral impact. So in some cases, let's say a new educational intervention is introduced, but it doesn't really have the desired impact. And we can then say that the impact was neutral because nothing happened. When we think about impact, we can also think about intended impact, so something that we set out to do from the very beginning. So let's say we introduce a language course and we are hoping that this language course will help learners reach a certain level of proficiency. This is our intended impact. But sometimes educational interventions, tests, learning materials can also have unintended impacts. And it's always important to think about all of these dimensions, both of these dimensions. We can also talk about direct and indirect impact. So to give you a very sort of basic example, let's say a teacher decides to introduce a new teaching method in class. So the direct impact of that could be that learners really like the method, they respond to it well, and therefore they are more engaged. But the impact of that specific initiative could also be indirect. So for example, over time, learners' attitudes towards their English classes might change. And this does not necessarily happen as a result of that one specific change, but it's a bit like a snowball technique when one thing leads to another. So sometimes it's very hard to say which one of these contributed directly to the impact that took place. And finally, we can think about short-term and long-term impacts. So short-term is something that happens immediately in the shorter term, and long-term can take months, years, or even decades to develop and to observe. So I've given you some starting suggestions as to what is impact and about different types of impact. And we would like to hear from you. And if you could just share your ideas in the chat. So why do you think it's important for us to measure the impact of learning materials and exams? I'll give you a couple of minutes to think about, and please let us know what you think. Any thoughts from your context? So if you think about maybe you know the environments in which you operate. Yes, we can see some answers coming in. So Gustavo says to measure how relevant those materials are at the time. Yes, absolutely, definitely. Christina, to ensure it is in line with our learning objectives. Yeah, absolutely. You know, we always want to make sure that we meet the objectives that we set out to meet, right? And one way of doing that is by measuring the impact that these objectives are having. Yes. Any other examples? So to measure how relevant the materials are, yes, Gustavo, great, another example. How learners and, oh, sorry, the chat is now running away from me. How learners and teachers are responding to those materials. Yes, that is definitely a very important reason. Leticia, because it shows evidence of how students are receiving the input of the class content. Yes, evidence is actually the key word. We talk a lot about evidence when we talk about impact evaluation. So that's definitely a good one to shout out. To assess if students are really learning and reaching the course objectives and have the ability to continue with new and more difficult concepts. Oh, thank you, Jose, for that. Yes, that was a very nice and elaborate explanation. Yes, and you're all absolutely right. These are all very good reasons why we want to measure impact. I'm going to give you some more examples. And the way I'm going to structure them is sort of starting with a more micro, like small intervention, and then moving to a slightly wider context. So the first example is from an assessment space. So let's say we introduce a new examination. So an examination that, obviously an English language examination, that's very well designed, or maybe not so well designed, I don't know, you'll tell me. Let's say it's an examination where students are assessed on their listening and reading skills, right? So one of the issues with that, actually, I'll start with the negative one, is that if we only focus on those two skills instead of the four skills, that could lead to the restriction of content, right? It could lead to the narrowing of the curriculum, because if we only focus on reading and listening skills, then that's what the teachers will be teaching, and they will deprioritize speaking and writing. It could also lead to teachers spending too much time practicing for the test and preparing students for the test instead of actually teaching them sort of real life communicative English language abilities. Now, if I tweak that exam a little bit and I add speaking and writing into that, so I'm focusing on all four skills, and I would also say that this is an exam that's very well aligned with the curriculum and also with the objectives of that specific learning environment. So using an exam that is well designed can actually help learners increase their motivation, and over time can of course lead to an increase in their proficiency levels. It also allows to achieve a closer relationship between learning and assessment, because learners have transparent objectives that they can aim for and the outcomes that they're hoping to achieve. So that was the first example. And now I'm going to show you another example, which is from a slightly different context. So I like to think about policy. So if you think about the impact within a policy context of using language tests for employment purposes. So let's say we are using an English language test to screen teachers' English language proficiency levels. Or another employment example would be, let's say we're using an English language test to screen healthcare professionals levels who want to practice in an English-speaking country. Now, what could be some of the positive impacts of such an initiative? Well, in the first instance, this would allow us to have a fair and consistent assessment of candidates' language ability, because everybody would be assessed against the same standard, right? They would all be taking the same test. So we know that that standard does not change. You know, it's not subjective. It's not based on someone's opinion, because we're using a standardized measure to do that. And that in turn would help us ensure safety and quality standards, you know, especially in healthcare where this is extremely important, but also in the school environment, right? We want to make sure that the teachers who teach English have the required level to do that. Now, what could be some of the negative impacts of that? Well, if you think about the standard, right? I mentioned that earlier. Imagine if that standard is set too high. So for example, if we are asking all the English language teachers to demonstrate that they have C2 level of English language ability. Well, this would probably mean that not many teachers would be able to demonstrate that, which also means that a lot of highly qualified teachers will be excluded from their professions, from practicing their profession completely unnecessarily. On the other hand, if we are aiming for something too low, like A2, well, then perhaps that level is not enough, right? And the teachers themselves would not be able to convey and to set maybe a good standard for English language learning to their students. And my final example will be that of social impact. So as the term suggests, I'm looking at societal consequences of an educational intervention. So let's say we introduce a bilingual education program in public schools. So let's say, we are teaching students in both English and Spanish, or English and Italian, or any other language. And this initiative is accessible to everyone, right? So I'm talking about public schools. So of course, the positive impact of that is that such an initiative would very much help ensure equity and inclusion, right? Because any student from any socio-demographic background would be able to benefit from this bilingual program. Over time, this would also allow us to achieve better language proficiency at country level, because as the students go through the program, their English language proficiency improves, and overall, as more and more students graduate, there are more and more fluent speakers of the language, who are bilingual in the country. Now, if you think about the negative consequences, one of them could possibly affect the teachers, right? So if you think that, if let's say with that specific initiative in mind, we say that, well, all the teachers are now expected to teach bilingually, and some of them are not fluent in English. So what happens to them? What does it mean for their job prospects if, perhaps they're not able to pick up the English language level to the required standard? And also, what about the students who choose not to attend the bilingual school or not to be part of the bilingual program? What does it mean for them? So what I tried to show you is that cause and effect explanations are actually rarely adequate. Because impact forms part of a very complex and dynamic set of processes and systems that we have to think about whenever we think about educational interventions. And any initiative, so as I said, whether it's the introduction of a new test or a new learning resource, will have both expected and unexpected consequences. It is also important to bear in mind that these things do not exist in isolation. So often when we think about the impact of a test, we also need to look at things like curriculum, teaching, learning resources, and how all of these things fit together. I would like to spend a few minutes talking specifically about the Cambridge approach and telling you why it is so important for us as an organization to measure and report on our impact, sorry. Well, we are very much aligned with the mission of our university, which is to contribute to society through the pursuit of education, learning, and research at the highest international levels of excellence. And the only way for us to know that we're actually doing it is by conducting case studies in the context where our products, where our learning resources are used, and reporting and monitoring on their impact. So our statement, our mission statement, is that all our products and services are designed to improve the lives of our learners, teachers, and wider society. So this is very much our starting point. This is something that we aim for, and this is something that we believe in. And the way we do that is by following our model, which is called Impact by Design. So the way it works is that when we set out to develop a new product or a new test, we always ensure that it is developed with positive impact in mind, right? So it is designed to benefit its users. It's enabled by technology, it's informed by theory, it's underpinned by empirical research and user needs. And then as we launch it, as we release it into the world, different users start using our products and services within different contexts. So what we then start to do is monitor and evaluate our impact evidence. So we gather different types of evidence, and we look at both the expected and unexpected consequences, and then we communicate our findings to the world. Now, if we uncover something that does not work as well as we were hoping that it would work, then we go back to this design process, we redesign it, we tweak the features that are problematic, and then we go through the same cycle again and again for as long as our product is in operation. Our work is underpinned by our impact framework. So it's called the Cambridge English Impact Framework. It is available on our website, And we structured it along, very sort of three simple but very important domains, which are learning, teaching, and assessment. We don't usually look at them separately. So normally we look at perhaps two or even all of them. So when we think about the learning domain, we usually look at things like language proficiency, right? So that's one of the things that we're interested in, whether learners are making the required learning gains. We also look at life competencies, so collaboration, creativity, problem solving, critical thinking. So a lot of these are embedded within our courses because we think that students can learn and pick them up as they learn the language. So of course, when we measure the impact of our learning materials, we will always look at the impact on the development of students' life competencies as well. Then, of course, engagement and motivation are two very important dimensions in educational research. And this is something that we always look at within our learning and assessment contexts. In terms of teaching, teaching methodologies and practices is probably one of the most obvious things to focus on because a course is only as good as the teacher who uses it, right? It's the teacher who makes the course come alive. So it's always important for us to see how these things work in practice and what the teacher is actually doing with the learning material. We also look at teacher confidence. So for example, to prepare students for our exams, to use our learning materials, to teach effectively. And we also look at teacher attitudes. So a very good example of teacher attitudes is actually when we compare, teachers who teach face-to-face and teachers who then shifted to teach online. It was interesting for us to see what attitudes teachers had toward digital learning and, how much they actually endorsed it, because we think that this has a very big impact on their teaching practices. And finally, in terms of assessment, some of the things that we might want to look at is the effects of assessment on language learning and language development, also learners' perceptions of assessment. So test anxiety is one of the things that we sometimes investigate because, we do not want students to be anxious, but we all know that in the end of the day, it is an assessment and sometimes an anxiety is something that cannot be helped. But also, we believe that tests have motivational aspects. And this is something that we like to investigate as well by talking to teachers and students and sometimes parents. So this actually brings me to my next slide, which is all about our data sources. So how and where we collect our impact data from. Well, some of the things that we do include focus groups and interviews. So focus groups would normally include 2 or 3 participants. They could be teachers, parents, could be students, school principals, coordinators. If it's one-on-one, then we would conduct an interview. We also do a lot of classroom observations and school visits because it's important for us to see what actually happens in real life, to see how our learning materials are being used, to see how learners respond to them and what the teachers actually do with them. We also review existing documents and data. So this could be things like the school curriculum, for example, or a curriculum of a certain country, for us to understand how that fits with the learning materials or with assessment. For younger learners in particular, we like to use learner drawings, and this is always a lot of fun because this allows us to see whether students have a more positive or a more negative predisposition towards their English language classes. We have also used learner diaries, where we asked learners to reflect on what they were learning, whether it was effective or not, and if there was something that they could do differently. That is a very good technique and actually something that is very easy to implement for the teachers themselves, actually. And of course, we do a lot of surveys because surveys is, I guess, the quickest and easiest way for us to capture a lot of data from our users. We also look at exam scores, where exams are used. But I guess the main takeaway is that we would usually use a combination of these things to help us answer the research questions that we set out to answer. And on that note, I'm going to hand over to Graeme now, who will talk to you about some actual real-life examples of our impact evaluation work.
Thank you, Brigita. Very interesting. Okay, I'm going to talk you through 2 examples of our impact evaluation work. Next slide, please. The first one is with the Universidad del Valle de Mexico, or UVM for short. Let me give you a little bit of information about UVM. Next slide, Brigita. So UVM is part of the Laureate group of universities. So it's a big, or it was a bit slightly smaller now, I believe, but it's a group of universities around the world, international group of universities, and they're private universities, but they're very big in Mexico. UVM are, at least. They have 32 campuses across the country, and they do degrees in everything from marketing to medicine, and a lot of the degrees have an English language component in them. So they have at any one time, at the moment, around 25,000 students learning English. So a pretty big teaching and learning English provider. Now, recently, UVM decided to move over to a flipped classroom approach to teaching English, or FCA, as I'm going to call it for short. And this is something that we, Cambridge, so can you go, thanks, Brigita, supported UVM with, in terms of materials and lesson planning, etc. Now, before I move on to the next slide, I'd just like to ask you what you understand by the flipped classroom approach. So can you write in the chat what you think is the flipped classroom approach? And there's often more than one right answer to this because it can vary depending on the context. So please write any comments, any answers in the chat, please, and I'll have a look at those. Just give you a moment to think and to write. Oh, now they're coming in thick and fast. This is a problem. There's nothing for ages and everybody writes at once. You give the topic as homework and students need to learn and read at home, and then in class you can actually practice. Yeah, that's pretty much what I would say. Yeah, very good. Alejandra. Study started by students before joining a class for discussion collaboration. Excellent. Joanna, the flipped classroom approach reverses the traditional learning structure. Students review instructional materials at home, freeing up class time. Yeah. Students learn at home, the theoretical part of the unit, and then in class they practice. Blended learning. Yeah, there's an element of blended learning. All right, yeah, all of those answers I would say are pretty accurate and pretty similar to what UVM were doing. So next slide, please, Brigita. Okay, so when the flipped classroom was introduced, there was an online component. I think somebody mentioned blended learning. So the guided self-study was done online on a special platform. And the focus was on language content and structured practice. So basically grammar and vocabulary mainly, there was some skills work, and structured practice, things like filling in gaps, etc. And this was done as well, particularly the vocabulary and the topics, in preparation for the classes. And then the classes were focused on communication, in particular speaking. So the reason that UVM changed their teaching model was for two reasons. The main one was that they wanted to improve students' levels of speaking. So they wanted to make sure they had better speaking skills when they finished, because this was something that people had commented on. And the second one, maybe less important, but nonetheless interesting, was that they wanted learners to become more independent. And the flipped classroom approach was a way of promoting this. Next slide. Brigita. So after they'd been doing it for just over a year, we talked to them about doing an impact study with them. And they were very interested to find out what effect, what impact introducing the flipped classroom approach had on their students and on the teaching. So we looked at these two main areas. You can see their engagement with teaching and learning from the students. So how engaged were they? And also English teaching and learning practices. So what had changed regarding those? And we used a number of different ways of gathering data, as Brigita has mentioned before: questionnaires, focus group interviews, classroom observations, and we had quite a lot of participants because it's a big university, so almost 4,000 students answering our questionnaires, 200 teachers and 27 coordinators from around the different campuses in Mexico. Next slide, please. And what did we find out? Well, a lot of things, some of them very positive. So we found out that students generally were engaged with the topics in the learning materials. They were rated as interesting. And we also had some good data which suggested that learners were indeed becoming more independent, and we'll come on to that in a moment. But we also found out that 36% of students were spending less than the recommended 2 hours on online self-study, and this was self-assessed as well, so I suspect that it may well be quite a lot higher than that. Obviously this has real repercussions for the classroom teaching. So if they don't do the preparation, they won't know the vocabulary, the grammar, the skills to do the communicative activities in class. So one way we thought of countering this, and what we recommended to UVM, was to do some student induction training, particularly how to use the platform. That was something that students mentioned that it was difficult to use. Also to talk to them about the demands of the course, so what they needed to do, make sure that they understood that they were expected to do this preparation before they come to class, and more generally, I guess, explain about the flipped classroom approach. What were the benefits of it, what they were expected to do. For example, the classroom was a place of communication, and also to teach them some skills for independent learning, because a lot of them were coming straight from school. They hadn't had this opportunity to be independent learners before, so it was all new for them. So these are skills which they needed to learn and develop. Next slide, please. And the second takeaway was really linked to this. We found out that the transition to this new approach was really difficult for some students. They were tending to fall behind quite early on in the course. They would become demotivated, so they wouldn't study, fall further behind, etc., etc. So it was a kind of negative spiral. So what we thought would be a good idea is, along with the induction, that there was a slower speed of teaching and learning in the first term. So reduce the learning objectives, give the students a chance to understand and get used to what the flipped classroom approach. And then hopefully you wouldn't have so many of them falling behind so early on. And we also saw in the classrooms, when we did the lesson observations, that some of the teachers were really rushing through the materials and weren't giving the students enough time to engage with the activities. And that looked quite frustrating for the students. But I think the teachers were probably teaching towards these learning objectives. So, you know, it's beneficial for the students, but it's also beneficial for the teachers, so they don't have to rush through the material. Next slide. As I said before, we did have some positive findings about the FCA and how it encourages students to become independent learners. Teachers commented on this, so there's a quote there. I think they became more responsible and more aware of their development, and that was a kind of common theme from teachers when we interviewed them. And of course, the idea, just to explain, the idea of this learner independence is, a number of academic studies have found that it's highly or strongly correlated with achievement. So in this case, language proficiency. So students who tend to be more independent tend to do better. So it's something that is worth promoting in the classroom. And this, we found that teachers were quite aware of it in the main, that is something for them to do and something important for them to do in the classroom. So you can see the second quote there. As teachers, what we have to do is let them see why it's important to be more independent. So it was nice to see that teachers are understanding that and are trying to grow this learner independence as well. Next slide. So takeaway 4, if you remember back to when I explained the kind of objectives of the change to the flipped classroom approach, the main one was communicative skills, so to improve students' speaking principally. And we found that teachers and students as well were very positive about this. Some of them talked about English really having become the language of the classroom, so they were communicating in English, whereas perhaps before they'd been more inclined to speak Spanish. And there's a nice quote here from one of the teachers: "I think it's really working with our students. I'm able to see it every day when I'm talking to them or when they text me a message." So perhaps they would text a message. In the past, it would have been in Spanish, but now they would do it in English. But we found that more could still be done. So in the lesson observations, we thought that English could be used more often in some of the classes, not all of them, but in some of the cases. Teachers would answer questions in Spanish sometimes, when really there was no need to do it. But I think that was partly due to the fact they had so much to do in the classes. As I mentioned before, it was a real kind of pressure to get through the material. But it may also be because they were not really sure of how to manage the communicative activities that they had to do. So one thing that we suggested was to give teachers some professional development in communicative language teaching to make sure they had the skills to deliver these classes. Next slide, Brigita, thank you. And that is really linked to takeaway number 5, that teachers need to understand the FCA and how to implement it. So really, you know, in some cases we noticed in the observations that teaching practice hadn't really changed. So I think it's essential when you introduce this new way of doing things that that teachers really understand why they're doing it and what the goals are. So you need to kind of change their mindset, shift their philosophy a little bit. And again, I think some professional developments, so not just in communicative language teaching, but also in the flipped classroom approach and how to manage classrooms when using that approach would be very useful for teachers. So those were our 5 takeaways. So in general, really positive, but there were some things to be improved as well. And now I'd like to talk to you kind of the other end of the spectrum. So we've had higher education in Mexico. Now we're doing primary school young learners in Chantilly in France. We have a project with the City Council since 2018. They've funded the pre-A1 starters exam and Fun for Starters books for teachers and students to prepare them for the exam. And it's in primary grades 4 and 5, which are the last 2 grades in the French primary school system. So of course, you know, they've been spending money on it in Chantilly. So the local council, the city council, were really interested to find out what effect it was having, whether it was having a positive effect on language teaching in the primary schools. Next slide, please. We talked to them about this. We agreed to do an impact study with them. You can see the 3 research questions we came up with there. I won't read them out because they're quite long, but basically, does it help students to improve their educational outcomes, to improve their English? Is it a good way of teaching? Fun for Starters book, is it efficient and helps with those better outcomes? And does it lead to any change in the system for English language teaching in Chantilly? And we gathered from all sorts of data sources. You can see them down the right-hand side there. All the things that we've talked about before, and we had interviews with teachers, parents, school leaders, and local community leaders as well. Next slide. And what did we find out? Well, we found out some really positive stuff. So both teachers and students talked about the pre-A1 starters being reassuring, confidence building and motivating. Students expressed confidence that they could do well in the test, which was really nice to hear. Teachers thought the tests were motivating for students. And one of the things I think that they liked was that there's not a pass or fail, so all of the students are rewarded at the end. And that's a nice quote there about the exam reassuring them, allowing them to gain confidence in learning English. And of course, things like confidence and motivation are really important when you're thinking about achievement as well. Again, strongly linked to achievement. So that was a very good finding. Next one. Students and teachers both said that the material was engaging. Students enjoyed the Fun for Starters course book. And teachers said that students find the content interesting. Of course, again, engagement is something really important for students to improve. If they're not engaged with it, then they're unlikely to pay much attention and unlikely to improve. Next slide, Brigita. Thank you. Teachers were very positive about Fun for Starters as well. All of them that we talked to said they liked it and they found it easy to use. And most of them also thought it prepared students well for the exams. And you can see in the quote here as well, some school leaders mentioned that it supported teachers who weren't necessarily English language teachers. So they hadn't had English language teaching training, but the course book would help them. It would kind of like walk them through the kind of activities at the right level and what they needed to do in the classroom. So that was another positive finding as well. Next slide, please. But unfortunately, we did find that a lot of the parents commented that English instruction is not consistent or integrated. So when they moved from primary school to secondary school in the state system, some of the children were actually going back to zero. They were starting again as complete beginners in secondary school, which, you know, is very demotivating for the students, and the parents were very unhappy with that, generally speaking. Which meant they were talking about private options, either secondary school or perhaps language schools in the evening after school, so that the students could keep up with their work. So in summary, you know, a good project. It was having a positive impact, supporting students' learning. Teachers were finding the books good to use. However, there were some more broad issues about you know, the system, the English language system. So just to summarize the whole talk from Brigita and myself. So Brigita talked you through what impact is and why we measure it. She also talked about how we evaluate the impact of our products on teachers and learners, showed you the impact by design diagram, and also talked you through the impact framework. And I've given you a couple of examples of our impact work. We talked about the flipped classroom in universities in Mexico, and also the Young Learners Exam and Learning Materials in primary schools in Chantilly in France. So that's the end of our talk. Thank you very much. And we'd be happy to take any questions for a few minutes.
Yes, shall we have a look at the Q&A? Sorry, I seem to, every time I try and go to the Q&A button, my slides disappear.
Well, I think that's all right. They've seen the slides,
We
haven't
can
they?
stop sharing them.
Yeah.
So, right. We do have some questions, Graeme. There's one about classrooms, so I think I'll start with that one.
Go for it.
How can the flipped classroom model be adapted for different grade levels and implemented in schools?
Yeah, that's a good question, isn't it? So I think, you know, the flipped classroom doesn't need to be black and white. So what was implemented by UVM was a very kind of stark, we're doing the flipped classroom, we're going for it 100%. But I think in a lot of schools, you know, it's perhaps better done if it's implemented more gradually. So, I mean, particularly at the lower levels where students don't really have the capacity to be independent. So I'm thinking about primary school. You know, it's really difficult for students to be completely independent from there. I mean, you can foster a degree of independence. So I think it's really a case of introducing it gradually in a lot of contexts and making sure students really understand what they have to do as well. You know, a bit like I mentioned the induction session for UVM. I think that's really key. Would you have anything to say about that, Brigita?
No, I think these are all very valid points. And actually, I think you've started answering the next question, which is how could we assist teachers to be prepared for the flipped classroom? I think what you've said about induction is probably a good starting point. Is there anything else that you think we should add?
Well, I mentioned, you know, that teachers really need to understand the purpose and how to implement the flipped classroom approach. You know, so I mean, in particular, if they're going to do communicative activities in the classroom, then they really need to know how to manage those communicative activities. So that kind of skill, I think, is really essential for the flipped classroom.
Definitely, yes. Thank you, Graeme. Another question that we have, what is the most challenging part of evaluating impact? There are many challenging parts. I think for me, it's quite often getting the right level of engagement from our participants because we always aim to have a representative sample. So, you know, we want to make sure that we are getting the answers that we need from students, teachers, parents, and sometimes, you know, for whatever reasons, you know, different groups of stakeholders did not engage. Sometimes it's something as simple as, you know, they didn't see an email from us with a survey link. Sometimes it's perhaps cultural, you know, in some countries, stakeholders prefer certain methods of data collection. In some countries, they absolutely hate surveys. So for example, you know, they never would want to answer that. So that's definitely one of the challenges. So getting the data that we need from the participants that we really want to target. Is there anything on your mind, Graeme? What do you think is the most
That's
challenging
exactly
thing?
what I was thinking. I mean, when we do these impact studies, the most difficult thing is getting, getting the data really. Once we've got the data, then it's fine usually. There's not so many challenges. But yeah, getting that representative set of data.
Yes, absolutely. How do you decide what impact data you want to collect and when? That's another question that we have. I think in the first instance, we would want to talk to the key stakeholders involved to really understand the context, the background, the requirements, as much really information as possible to know about the context in which we're operating. And then based on that, we can design our study, so we can think about the kind of research questions that we want to ask. And then from that, we think about what kind of data we need to collect. Is there anything you'd like to add, Graeme?
Yeah, I think that's good. I mean, we usually develop theories of change, don't we, Brigita? So the idea of a theory of change is that you think about what the impacts or the outcomes are going to be, and you kind of work across from what the learning product or what the project provides and what the outcomes are and the impacts. So it's kind of, you try and make those causal connections, don't you, between things, although sometimes it's quite difficult, isn't it, to do that. So maybe that's another challenge actually of evaluating impact is making those causal connections between things, saying one thing causes another, because quite often it's very difficult to say that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's difficult to separate, and sometimes there are many things that cause something else to happen. Yeah, that's a very good point. And just I've just seen another question come up on the screen, and we have about 1 minute, so I thought we should probably take it. So Gustavo wants to know, as coordinators, what route do you suggest to walk as to find out the impact of our class format and material selection? I would say, Gustavo, pretty much what we've been talking about. If you think about the data sources that we presented and what's feasible in your environment to collect the data from the users around, the format of the classroom, I would probably say, I'm not sure exactly what you mean, but classroom observations would probably a good tool to use, especially as a coordinator. I think this is something that you could probably implement. And I guess in terms of material selection, again, it's very similar to what we've discussed. We always suggest looking at the broader picture. So how the materials that you use fit with your objectives, the objectives of your environment, the curriculum, the assessment, pedagogy, and sort of all of these things together rather than in isolation. That would be my advice. Do you have anything to add, Graeme?
I was just going to say one thing that we do if we ever can is we compare test scores, don't we? So if you have a baseline, you find out how your students are doing when they begin the course, and then you can have a look at the end and you can see what kind of improvement's been made, and you can compare those across years as well, for example, if you have that kind of data. So that's a nice way to represent some kind of positive improvement in language proficiency.
Yes, I like your point about comparability, Graeme. It's more difficult to implement, but if we can compare, like one group against the other, that can give you some very nice parameters to work with to really separate the impact of your interventions. Right, I think we are out of time.
Yes, I think we are.
Thank you for all the messages in the chat. We received a lot of thank yous. Thank you very much for attending our session today. We've really enjoyed presenting to you all.